So let's talk in a little more detail about these three different elements of executive presence. I want to just talk to you a little bit about them, and as I am, think to yourself, what's resonating for me? How does this apply to me? How might others perceive me in this way? The first aspect of this model is what we call style. Now, style is not just about appearance. When you think about style, think execution. How do you actually get stuff done? So what are we looking at? What are we measuring there? We're measuring assertiveness. How do you handle conflict? How do you bring up difficult issues? Can you actually speak up and challenge, not just at the team level or the peer level? What about your manager? What about a really senior executive inside the organization? Can you do that? And can you do that in a way that can be heard by others? How inclusive are you? And inclusiveness really goes beyond, do I have the right people at the table? Am I seeking input? I'll give you a quick example. One of my clients, Jane, was leading the digital transformation at her organization. And this was no joke. This was a $100 million project, a project that was going to dramatically reduce cost. This was a big deal. And so the company had actually announced this project to Wall Street. Now everybody was on the hook to deliver results. 8 months into the project, nobody had adopted the new technology. They were incredibly behind. What's going on? Problem with the strategy? Problem with the technology? Problem with the communication? Well, in fact, it was probably a combination of all those things, but inclusiveness reared its ugly head. At Bates, we went inside the organization, we interviewed all of those different stakeholders to understand, how did they perceive this initiative? How do they perceive the leadership team leading this? And what was interesting is the most important leaders in the company, all of the business presidents said, you didn't even ask me about this technology. You didn't seek my input, doesn't reflect the voice of the customer, doesn't resonate with what we want to do with our business. We're not going to use it. That's inclusiveness. And that's why executive presence has a very real impact on business performance. Let's talk about that second component, what we call substance. When we think substance, think credibility. It's your practical wisdom, not just being smart, but how do you apply that? How do you talk about complexity in a way that we all get, so it seems simple? What kinds of questions are you able to ask an audience? And oh, by the way, your composure, because we want a sense of calm in our leaders. So important in times of change in large organizations. When everyone's freaking out, you are the one who can get people refocused. That's substance. What's our last element of executive presence? Maybe the most important, character. When you think character, think trust. So these are the qualities that essentially answer the question, so why should I believe you? Why do I even want to work with you? So when you ask me for a meeting, am I saying, yeah, absolutely, or am I saying, gee, I wonder what this is really about? Right? So what are we looking at when we look at character? We're looking at your authenticity and your transparency, your ability to be genuine and conversational and real, right? Your integrity, which is not just about your sort of ethic or moral integrity, but actually your behavioral integrity. Do you do what you say you're going to do? Do you cancel all of your one-on-ones, right? When you show up to a meeting that I'm bringing you to impress my important client, can I count on you to knock it out of the park? Those are the kinds of qualities we can measure for the first time. Qualities that in the past, again, seemed fuzzy, seemed unclear. We now have a way to look at those. So, style, execution, substance, which is credibility, and character. Now, a question that we often get asked about these is, well, wait a minute, are men or women better in one area or another? And you know what we find for the most part? Not at all. Almost no difference. And where there are differences, guess what? Women are typically rated higher. So why is this important to know? Because for organizations, right, it levels the playing field. It starts to give us not just an objective way to understand how leaders perform, but also recognize, right, we can coach and support their ability to grow in these areas, men and women alike. Now, I will tell you a couple of things. Where do we as leaders tend to struggle? Well, one of the biggest and most challenging areas is an area we call restraint. Restraint is one of those qualities under the character dimension that builds trust. What is restraint? Restraint is our emotional temperature, being seen as balanced, predictable, as opposed to volatile or not predictable. Where do we tend to also struggle? Resonance, our ability to read a room, to be kind of dialed in. So if you've ever had somebody say to you, hey, are you sure you understood what the question was? Sometimes that's the key. We need to work on our resonance. Out of these areas, what's a strength for you? If you had to pick one, and listen, as senior leaders, you're strong in all of them. And what can you do to really leverage that strength? Because here's what else we know. When we don't perceive a strength of yours, it's not because you don't have it, but it's because some of those other areas might be getting in the way. And so as the great philosopher, Gisele Bündchen said, after the Patriots lost a game to the Giants, remember what she said? She said, you know what? My husband cannot throw the ball and catch the ball at the same time. So executive presence, it's not about how great we as leaders throw the ball. It's about whether other people want to catch it. Bring it down the field. Thank you.